of your time in the government, in the municipal government. So the municipal government is not just an institution, you know, with administrators, but most of the people working, they're actually people who are school leaders. No? They are not, you know, talking, you know, receiving instructions. They're actually building the school system. And you can see that is mirrored in a high level of prestige of the profession. No? You compare that with the Czech Republic, no, by the perceived status, and I don't even know whether this is real. This is just what teachers themselves tell us. Is very low, almost as low. The countries where my children go to school is at the very end in France. And again, French teachers are actually quite well paid, so you can't put it simply on the working conditions. It has to do much more with the kind of prestige that we see. And you know, you can say, well, that's just teachers complaining. Do we need to take that too serious? But actually, it is a very important predictor of the learning outcomes that we see in PISA, where teachers perceive the status of the teaching profession to be better, learning outcomes are higher. And that's, I think, another important lesson. We don't know what the causal nature of that relationship. It can go both ways. It could be that where the status of teaching is high, you get the best and brightest to become teachers, they do a great job, PISA results will be good. It could also be the other way around. You know? Where teachers do a really good job, you know, society will appreciate their work. We don't know from this. But what is clear is that there is a relationship between the status of the teaching profession and ultimately the results that we see. And it has also to do with teacher skills. This is a really interesting slide that I show you from our survey of adult skills. What you see here is the distribution of numeracy scores among degree holders. No? People who have gone, who have achieved a university degree, and we test their numeracy skills, and you can see the variability in this. And you can see actually, you know, Japan comes out very high, Finland comes out very high, but actually the Czech Republic is also coming out really, really high. No? In a way, you can say your university graduates have a great skill set. That's something you can be very proud of. But, you know, what about teachers? Teachers are also university graduates. Well, when we look at their skills, it looks like this. If you are in Japan and Finland, graduates are highly skilled, but teachers are even more highly skilled. And that is because those countries attract the best and brightest into the teaching profession. Everybody wants to become a teacher. If you look at the Czech Republic, your overall graduate population is very strong. But teachers are more at the lower end of the spectrum. Again, it shows us that the teacher education, that the best high school students do not want to go to teacher education. There's something to what, and then also has to do with the status of the teaching profession. Changing that distribution is a very important ingredient to make teaching a more attractive profession. Very last, you know, in the past was divided. You know, we track students, we put them into different streams, and you know that happens in my country a lot, in Germany, happens in your country a lot. That comes from the industrial age. You know, we only needed a few really well-educated workers and a lot of people with low skills, so divide students up, you know, in academic and vocational schools and so on. But in the future, there needs to be a lot more integration and openness in the education systems. I think we should never level down the horizon of any student, because we will need every student in the education system. And that also means we better need to integrate the tools that we have. And I come here to, you know, evaluation and assessment. Often, you know, we think about evaluation as at the end, you know, going to get a test. And I know a lot of people, everybody in the Czech Republic pays a lot of attention to the matura, no? You know, the entrance exam, the school exit exam. But in the future, probably, assessment and testing will take less time away from students and be more an integral part of the learning experiences. That's the last thing, the culture of assessment and evaluation to change from, you know, looking at results at the end, telling students what didn't work, to actually giving continual feedback to the learning process, to integrate the assessment and the learning culture. Again, last November I was in Shanghai and visited a primary school, and I took this picture. And this was a class where students were learning calligraphy. And when you think about calligraphy, you know, Chinese kids need to learn 4,000 Chinese characters. It's a lot of work. And you see students drawing, and you don't think about assessment and technology. But you know, while these students were drawing on the table, under the table they had a scanner. No? And next to them, they had a tablet. And the tablet was giving them real-time dynamic feedback about the quality of their drawings. This was the use of artificial intelligence in education, where teachers were not giving students feedback, you know, a day later or a week later, marking up things in red, but students were interacting, you know, by getting individual feedback. But it didn't make the teacher less important. It actually made the teacher more important. The teacher had a bigger role. The teacher could suddenly look into what every student was doing, not just a few students. We called in the classroom. And I saw that at the end of the lesson, you know, when the teacher went with me in the neighboring room and said, let's have a look at the results. And the teacher could see actually, you know, here was a student who took 4.5 seconds longer to do something that most students from a similar social demographic background do faster. What can I do especially for this student? Or here were common misconceptions of my students in this lesson that teach me that I must have explained something badly. How can I improve my own teaching? You could see assessment and learning were becoming one, and students were not giving a test that was either too hard for them or too easy with them, but they were just, you know, doing their work well and getting very individualized and personal feedback. Those are things that I think in the future, when it comes to the teacher, we need to take to heart as well. Last but not least, parents. Actually, what our data from PISA say is that students who say their parents are interested in their schoolwork, they're much more ambitious in their schooling, and they're also much happier with their lives. And this was about 15-year-olds. Now, when I think about, you know, my children at age 15, I'm not sure they were so keen that I was very interested in their schooling. But actually, when we survey students, that's what they tell us. The fact whether parents ask their children, how was school every day, had a bigger impact on student learning outcomes than parental income. This is about building bridges, building connections between schools and societies. Again, in the school in China, which was actually quite poor school in a rural neighborhood in Shanghai, I went to a teacher and asked her, so how do you engage parents in this? You know, you bring a very high-tech, modern world to these kids. How do you bring people on board? And she said to me, oh, well, you know, I try to call every parent about twice per week. And then I said to her, wow, you know, that must be a huge workload on you, a huge burden on you to do this. And she said, yeah, but you know, I never actually thought about it like this. If I wouldn't have all of those parents helping me, I could never do my job. So you could see really how teaching and learning was not just the work of a single teacher or a single school, it was actually a social project of the community, and teachers actually were an active part of this. Very last point I want to make, I know my time is up, moving from standardization and compliance and conformity, now which you're very good at, to actually strengthening ingenuity. When we survey teachers, you know, to what extent do you believe that if you're more innovative in your work, you're going to be recognized for this? People will look to you as something positive. We see about 1/4 of teachers saying yes to this, whereas 3/4 of teachers perceive their school to be an innovation, hostile environment. That's not necessarily the truth, but that's the perception of teachers. And if we cannot change that perception of teachers, it's going to be very hard to change anything. I know that challenges are tough. This is a very, very difficult agenda. Making teaching, it's easy to make it financially more attractive, and I think the Czech Republic is on a very good path with this. I've seen the data. I think that's something really working well, but I think the work to do to make teaching intellectually more attractive, to give teachers interesting careers, a work organization, an environment that really makes them, you know, like their job and be productive teachers. That's a long and hard road, but I'm really very privileged to be part of the discussion here. We're on the way to achieve this. Thank you very much.